I'm not going to be satisfied until everyone who watches me understand that everything happening right now would be happening if Kamala Harris won. Not exactly the same, but fundamentally the same. And if you can't see the difference between those two things, I genuinely don't think you're mature enough to understand the content that I produce in this channel. Because I keep having arguments about this where people are like, well, if Kamala Harris was a president, then this little thing would have been different. Yeah, but the nation of the United States has been on a long terminal decline for decades, and it's not been up to the whims of the President Trump, okay? It has been a product of a bipartisan consensus in certain policy decisions, one of which being our deference to Israel. Remember how people gave me a bunch of shit for saying that the Biden/Kamala Harris administration, as if there's a difference, would have attacked Iran too? Have you seen this? Former Biden administration senior advisor Amos Hochstein said he supported last summer's Operation Midnight Hammer.
In July 2024, Secretary Blinken claimed Iran was 1 or 2 weeks away from having enough fissile material breakout capacity to eventually make a weapon if Iran had decided to do so. There were indirect negotiations that the Biden administration did, but it went nowhere. So when President Trump argues that he did when no other president would, is it just simply that the bill was coming due and it fell on his watch?
I do think there's a certain element to that. And that's why
you guys fucking flamed me. There were posts in the subreddit. YouTube chat was mad at me when I said this. I said that the attack on Iran was almost inevitable because Israel was pushing it and Kamala Harris and Biden were completely subservient to Israel, and that the Democratic establishment was happy that Trump did it in his term because they wouldn't have to take the flak for it.
Was supportive of President Trump joining in June to take the strikes that we had thought internally in the Biden administration we may have to take if there was a second term. We thought that the spring, summer of 2025 was probably, we may have to be there in the same place. And we
Really?
we did war games. We did some practice runs on what it would look like to look into it. And because that may have had to happen under our watch as well. But he said we
may have had to happen. Like, they're not even treating it like a political decision or anything that the, anything like that the voters get to have an opinion on. You know, like, oh, you don't run, it just happens. Yeah, like, it would have happened. War with Iran? Yeah, you know, like, it was going to happen no matter what. Just in inevitability, you know, the product of inertia. We were hurtling towards conflict with Iran no matter, it doesn't matter what the voters want.
It obliterated their nuclear program. The question then is not about what he did in June. This war we were in now did not attack the nuclear facilities again. Mm-hmm. This was not about the nuclear. So the question now becomes, can you do a deal with the Iranians? And the maximalist positions that both sides have are right now very far apart, despite all the rhetoric that we're almost there or we are there, but if we're not there, we'll bomb the hell out of them.
This guy was literally born in Jerusalem. Yep, he identifies as a moderate Orthodox Jew. Also, he worked as a lobbyist. So, you know, whoever the, you know, just classic Biden administration staff. In March 2017, he joined Tellurian, a private Houston-based liquid natural gas company, where he served as senior vice president of marketing until his departure in September 2020. On August 10, 2021, Antony Blinken announced he'd be appointing Hochstein as the senior advisor for energy security. I love the deep state. I love the deep state. I'm gonna keep baiting you all with this bat until we accept it, so I don't have to deal with the fucking blowback that I'm going to get in 2027 and 2028, where I correctly point out the Dems and Republicans are fielding the same candidate, okay? He served in the IDF? Well, he was born in Jerusalem, so yeah, I would assume so. Everyone serves the IDF. Unfortunately, I have to agree with you. You were right. I didn't want you to be. Yes! Got another one. Yes! It's great. It's very depressing. You know, it's very depressing. For more on that.
And we're joined now by Amos Hochstein. He was a former Biden White House senior energy advisor and Middle East negotiator, and he's now managing partner at the investment firm TWG Global. Good to have you back here.
It's great to be here.
So President Trump said current gas prices are not very high, but regular gas costs are average like $4.05 a gallon. Last time we saw that was under the Biden administration when Russia invaded Ukraine. So if you were advising President Trump today, how do you make sure this spike isn't...
Kamala Harris also said she would not have gotten in this war. Yeah, so who do you believe? Kamala Harris, who says, who while campaigning said she was going to be harder on Iran than Trump, but now, after the Iran war has actually, you know, begun, said that she would not have gotten us into this war, or the Biden energy advisor, who says that Biden in his second term probably would have had to do this anyway. You know, who do you believe?
Long lasting.
Well, we're over $4 now because we have a real disruption. In the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we had a concern of a disruption that never actually happened, and it went all the way up to 5. For the president right now, any continued duration of closure of the Straits of Hormuz will have to have a spike in prices. When you have an energy crisis like the Strait of Hormuz, it's very slow moving, and then it's like falling off a cliff. Because when you close the straits, the world still has all the tankers that were on the water before. And that could take 25, 30.
All these economies get hit. I mean, in Europe, they're saying.
The administration's been saying, we have plenty in the U.S.
God.
Great. Been saying.
Managing partner TWG Global. Born in Jerusalem, works for a Houston-based liquid natural gas company, briefly gets to be energy advisor to Biden, then goes back to working. God, man, oh man. I'm getting real sick of it, man. By the way, it wasn't just the Biden administration. He worked for Hillary Clinton and Kerry as Secretary of State. Like he's been involved for a long time. A long time. He's tapped in, yeah.
We have plenty in the U.S. Great, but if you leave the U.S. and there is no jet fuel on the other side, so what happens is the fuel surcharges that Americans are going to see, that are already starting to see, and ahead of Memorial Day in the summer, tickets are going to be very expensive. When jet fuel is expensive in the rest of the world, it is also expensive here.
And we saw Spirit Airlines really struggling under that with the bankruptcy issue. Let me ask you about your Mideast experience here. In July 2024, Secretary Blinken claimed Iran was 1 or 2 weeks away from having enough fissile material breakout capacity to eventually make a weapon if Iran had decided to do so. There were indirect negotiations that the Biden administration did.
I genuinely don't think the Dems would have been unhinged enough to start this, but he's literally saying that they were in talks, that in Biden's first term, they were talking about how they might have to do this in a second. Like he's directly saying it. I don't know what other evidence you need to that point.
But it went nowhere. So when President Trump argues that he did when no other president would, is it just simply that the bill was coming due and it fell on his watch?
I do think there's a certain element to that. And that's why I was...
He's only referring to the strike Trump did last year? Yeah, the strike that Trump did last year was us declaring war on Iran. Like, that's how that works. We, like, carpet bombed their research facilities. That's war. No, it's not. Yes, it is. If Iran sent a bunch of missiles and bombers over to America and bombed us and killed a bunch of our civilians, I think it would very unambiguously be interpreted as an act of war. Only in the Americanoid mind can this be interpreted as like it's not like you're striking Yemen or some other failed state or whatever. Like Iran is a cohesive, organized, militarized state, you know? We did it. It was an act of war, you know? Whether or not Congress authorized it is not really relevant. Congress doesn't authorize shit.
Supportive of President Trump joining in June to take the strikes that we had thought internally in the Biden administration we may have to take if there was a second term. We thought that the spring, summer of 2025 was probably, we may have to be there in the same place. And we did war games. We did some practice runs on what it would look like to look into it. And because that may have had to happen under our watch as well. But he said
talking about it was what every admin does. We probably have a military plan to invade Antarctica. Yeah, we have a military plan for everything, but he's saying that he might have had to do it. They're talking about strikes in a nuclear facility. He was an advisor to the Department of Energy. Like this was his department. Why are you not taking him at his word? This is like a Biden admin deep state guy who's worked with the Democrats for 20 years saying like very straightforwardly, we probably would have had to do this too. I don't know, like why not take him at his word here? You know, if you think he's an arch Zionist who's incentivized to lie, then okay, why the fuck did Biden hire him? Why did Democrats hire him for like 20 years? You know,
obliterated their nuclear program. The question then is not about what he did in June. This war we were in now did not attack the nuclear facilities again. Mm-hmm. This was not about the nuclear. So the question now becomes,
he's a Zionist. It's hard to take them at their word. Unless their word is them saying they want to attack Iran, in which case I think that it's okay to take them at their word.
Deal with the Iranians, and the maximalist positions that both sides have are right now very far apart, despite all the rhetoric that we're almost there or we are there, but if we're not there, we'll bomb the hell out of them.
Right, or who knows who's going to show up or not show up from the Iranian side to negotiate with. I thought that was interesting that the ambassador acknowledged that.
Well, look, Margaret, when you have a negotiation that's being done loosely, right, phone calls and no real paper, you get to a point where Iran says Lebanon was included. The U.S. says, no, it wasn't. The Iranians say, we're opening the straits because...
Inflating a single strike on a research facility to carpet bombing their capital is insane. It wasn't a single strike. It was a carpet bombing in their research facilities. Also, I'm not conflating them. I'm saying that they're admitting they would have engaged in military action against Iran under a second Biden term. Why the fuck are you defending this? I'm not saying that Biden... You liberals, you always defer back to this Mott and Bailey position where I point out that the underlying policy position of both admins would have been the same, and your point is like, well, they wouldn't have done exactly the same thing. I'm not saying they would have done exactly the same thing. I'm saying that both admins would have been deferential to Israel's interests and would have attacked Iran, which would have led to similar destabilizing consequences in the region. Like... An admin that was willing to bomb their nuclear facilities is also an admin that would be willing to engage in follow-up action that would lead to the closure of the strait. We fucked up. We shouldn't have bombed their nuclear facilities either. Like what? You're just rolling the dice every time on whether or not they close the strait? Does that sound like a good foreign policy to you? The results of the attack on the facility was not the death of tens of thousands and destroying the world economy and strengthening Russia. Are you simple? It led to that. What are you talking about? That's like the A led to B. The attacks on the nuclear facility were a deference to Israel's foreign policy interests by continuing to maintain aggression against Iran, which led to the follow-up. The Trump administration also didn't say that they would bomb Tehran and kill the Ayatollah. Do you not see the underlying pattern of deference, the similar wavelength? You're arguing like a counterfactual that can't be proven or disproven. Well, just because this guy admits that he would have gone 50% as far as Trump doesn't mean he would have gone 100%. It didn't lead to it, even though they're related. You're actually fucking retarded. I'm sorry, dog. This is an insane level of Democrat dick sucking. That's fucking crazy to me. We're literally looking at an advisor being like, we would have done much the same. And you're like, well, he didn't say they do all the same things. It's crazy. What are you talking about? By the way, the Biden admin defended the Mossad pager attack and the bombing of Lebanon. They defended everything Israel did, man. They defended everything Israel did. I don't know if it means much, but didn't Kamala put up a big statement fully condemning military action in Iran? Yeah, when she's not the one leading it. Yeah, no shit. That's the point. The Democrats are happy that Trump is taking the flak. But the Biden administration and the Democrats now, both, they don't argue against the underlying logic of the Trump administration. They also think that all means are on the table when it comes to keeping Iran from developing a nuclear program, which means they're also in favor of strikes against Iran. If the Democrats believe that you should be able to do anything to prevent Iran from getting a nuke, they also agree with Trump that you should bomb Iran. Like it's a one-to-one. If everything is on the table, that is what it will lead to. Chuck Schumer literally said Trump was tacoing out by not continuing. Yeah, no, they're so fucking bloodthirsty, man.
It's completely open. And the Americans say, no, the blockade is staying. If there's no paper, no serious negotiation on this, and we're trying to do it really quickly to assuage markets, then you get to these misunderstandings. And now we're in a worse position.
Dems probably would have done the 2025 strikes. No way in hell they would have done the 2026 strikes, get the strait closed. Do you people, okay, genuinely, do you not understand cause and effect? The reason the 2026 strikes happened was because Israel wanted to maintain pressure against Iran. The original strikes in 2025, Operation Midnight Hammer, were a deference to Israel's foreign policy interests. 2026 was a follow-through from 2025. The only reason 2026 happened was because in 2025, we already indicated that we were willing to strike Iran in order to prevent them from developing nukes. The original pretext for striking in 2026 was to, again, prevent them from getting nuclear weapons. If you have already acknowledged that you cede to the logic of we can strike Iran to prevent them from getting nukes, that is where it leads to. That is where the logic leads to. Democrats already defended Israel's aggression against Syria and Lebanon. Like the idea that Democrats would have put a hard line down here, I don't know. Would they have done things slightly differently? Sure, maybe. But like the underlying problem, which is warring in the Middle East, would have continued. Do you not see that? The reason they did these things is preserved. It's the same idea.
Very serious issue. And I think it shouldn't take just 3 days to do a nuclear deal. It's really, really critical.
Right.
But if the straits are not opened soon,
Dems didn't even care when Israel bombed Qatar. Yeah, I don't know if you guys remember what it was like in the Biden admin post-October 7th, but every day you'd wake up to a headline of Israel illegally bombing like one of 8 neighboring countries. Like Gulf states, Syria, Lebanon, Iran. It didn't matter, man. They were doing all of it. And every day you'd get the fucking Department of State briefing where they would pretend to not know anything and then defend it anyway. Like it was every day, man. Every day. It never stopped.
the leverage that they have, and my concern is no matter how the war ends, the Iranians now have a card they never had before in practice. In theory, we knew they can close the straits, but they never did. And now for the foreseeable future, they have this card against us and against their neighbors.
Why do you think President Trump isn't deploying his top diplomat, his national security advisor? Why aren't we seeing Secretary of State Rubio leading on this?
I mean, that's a mystery that I think many in the region and around the United States are asking. Why is this not being run by the Secretary of State, who's also his national security advisor? Maybe the Secretary of State doesn't believe that this is the right approach. I don't know. You have to ask him if you can get him to answer that question.
But we would love for him to join
What's
us.
the point of him doing this interview? I don't know. Probably setting up his next lobbyist position.
I'm sure you would, but that's a real mystery. Look, the Vice President of the United States is.
But does it show? You know, when you're going to the negotiating table, the Vice President going is important because the last two times Witkoff and Kushner showed up with the Iranian delegation, the talks fell apart. In fact, they ended in bombing. So you need someone who wasn't there the last two times it failed, right?
And you need someone who is senior enough that the Iranians believe speaks for the president. So I think that it's important that the vice president or someone go. I think it would have been great if we can
Not to mention nothing outside of nuclear weapons could destroy all the Iranian enriched uranium in the mountain tunnels. Yeah, like that. If the Democrats agree that you should be able to attack Iran in order to prevent them from getting nukes, does that not lead to continued attacks on Iran anyway? Like, doesn't that make all of this inevitable? Because we know Israel wants to attack Iran. If the Democrats also believe it's okay to attack Iran to prevent them from getting nukes, doesn't that give them like infinite justification into the future? So Operation Midnight Hammer buried their enriched uranium. Okay, well, the excuse for the 2026 attacks was that they were also close to getting a nuclear weapon because they still had the enriched uranium. Like, wouldn't it just keep, it would just keep going? It's gonna keep going until a Democrat acknowledges that whether or not Iran gets nuclear weapons isn't our fucking business.
To a point where we have preparatory talks and you send the vice president at the end of the process in order to break the logjam.
Stay with us, if you would. I do have to take a break, but I have more to finish on this topic. On Friday of this past week, we saw the president announce 10 days of pause to halt the fighting between...
Basically, we, the liberals in chat, aren't saying Democrats aren't subservient to Israel. We are saying they're less stupid than Trump. Probably sufficiently unstupid to prevent the strikes from happening in the first place. The strikes were just too dumb. Okay, but this is like genuinely, this is the lowest bar imaginable. And also you're basically saying like, well, the Democrats would have raped us more like kindly, I guess. Like the Democrats would also enable a nonstop state of war in the Middle East where Israel gets to attack their neighboring countries and Democrats lie to defend them nonstop. But at least they would have been like slightly more intelligent in their defense. If that's the best argument you have, I genuinely, and I'm not kidding, prefer the Republicans because at least they're retarded enough to make a spectacle out of it. I would rather Republicans like do the same thing but stupider, so at least everyone can pay attention to how bad it is, rather than the Democrats like ineptly, feebly going through the same, you know, rigmarole, but doing it with a modicum of competence so we get to maintain the empire for another 20 years. Like, what we're doing is bad. That Trump is doing it stupidly is, I guess, like a multiplicative factor, but the underlying equation, like, you can multiply it times 1.5 all you want. If the starting number is bad, the end number is going to be bad. We need to fix the underlying problem here, man. Like, isn't it bad that the liberal party, the Democrats, is in favor of unpopular permanent war in the Middle East to be deferential to the political and military interests of Israel? Like, isn't that bad? Is that not a concern? Isn't that illiberal? Like, at least the Republicans are doing an illiberal thing, right? Like, that's on brand for them. They're not liberals, so they're doing something illiberal. But the Democrats are also doing something illiberal, but they're supposed to be the liberals. I don't like, isn't that a problem for you? I don't know. I feel like the Democrats should be proposing some kind of meaningful alternative a little bit.
Hezbollah and Israel, which is basically linked to the big deal he really wants to get to with Iran. What do you make of this truce?
So a few things. One, I'm glad
Yeah,
to see.
it'd be like SPD fans in the 1930s being like, well, we were going to do the Holocaust too, but we were going to do it non-violently or whatever. We were just going to deport them, not kill them. Like, and then people in the subreddit and chat are like, well, it would have been better than what the Nazis did. Like, yeah, I guess. I don't know if that's a good position to start from.
That the fire is halted, even if it's a pause. The worrisome part is that it was seen as a ceasefire that was brokered by Iran by insisting on a Lebanese ceasefire before they would show up to talks in Pakistan. That's a disaster because the one thing we have always been emphasizing, Iran does not control Lebanon. It has none of their business what happens in Lebanon. Hezbollah has been unmasked in this conflict over the last couple of years as not really a Lebanese fighting organization or terrorist organization as they claim, but rather they said we are doing this at the behest of the Iranians. And
this is just a lie, but it's good to hear the Democrats repeating the same lies that Israel and the Republicans do. Hezbollah is the de facto military of Lebanon, formed because the Lebanese government is inept and weak, and also because Israel keeps fucking invading Lebanon. Like, so for him to repeat that, like, again, the underlying logic remains the same, doesn't it? Whether it's Republican or Democrat, the logic here is, well, attacking Hezbollah isn't really attacking Lebanon, you know? Yeah, it might be an army hundreds of thousands of people strong that defends and represents the interests of the majority of Lebanon, and the official Lebanese government is too weak to do anything about it, and, you know, in large part, power and legitimacy in governments derives from a monopoly on the ability to commit violence. But, you know, forget all of that. They're fake. It's like a fake group. Just a few 100,000 people and a bunch of weapons and rockets and missiles and stuff. Don't worry about it, you know.
Allowing the Iranians to dictate terms is not a good thing. However, direct talks between Israel, even at the lower level, at the ambassador level, is a good development.
Which congressman is this guy? Moderate Orthodox, born in Jerusalem, worked as a lobbyist and consultant for a Houston-based fossil fuel company, been in and out of Democrat administrations for 20 years, advised the Biden administration from the Department of Energy, close confidant of Biden throughout his presidency, now works as a senior manager at some hedge fund. Yeah, the least corrupt Democrat consultant yet found. We found the most ethical, least compromised Democratic consultant.
Most of the Lebanese people want to see a lasting ceasefire. Even if they don't want to see a peace agreement, they want to see end of conflict. But we have to have a serious effort here. There's such a great moment of opportunity. It will not be a moment of opportunity if Israel is occupying a significant part of Lebanon to reestablish a buffer zone.
I mean, without Iran's weapons, what would Hezbollah be? An army of hundreds of thousands of people with lots of weapons? I'm not sure what you mean. Like, Iran does back Hezbollah, but the idea that Hezbollah exists only because of Iran is just factually incorrect. They exist because Israel invaded Lebanon. Like, they formed because Israel invaded Lebanon and were forced to leave. Thank you, Reagan.
That won't work because ultimately that will help Hezbollah reestablish its political footing and their narrative. So we have to get to the table, make sure Israel withdraws from Lebanon, stop the fighting, and give the actual help to Lebanon to disarm Hezbollah. They cannot do it on their own.
Ambassador Waltz on that. Can they do that? And to be clear, the Israelis have said not only that they're going to stay in southern Lebanon.
They're also very much an Iranian proxy. Both labels are true. I feel like calling Hezbollah an Iranian proxy is like calling Ukraine an American proxy. Like, they receive our weapons and training, and, you know, not as much as I'd like, but they do receive our weapons and training. And also there's like a shared geopolitical interest, but the impetus from the Ukrainians to defend themselves would exist whether or not America had anything to do with it. Likewise with Hezbollah. Hezbollah has literal IRGC officers in the structures. Yeah, and Ukraine has received direct training from NATO officers. I'm just saying that the impetus from Hezbollah and the Lebanese people to defend themselves against Israel exists whether or not Iran supplies them with arms or people. Like, it's just a fact, you know?
But also take some of the territory that they had seized after Assad fell in Syria. So it's a serious negotiation that has to take place.
This is a tactical victory for Israel that will lead, once again, an overreach that will lead them to lose more ground.
I want to ask you, as a Democrat, there was this extraordinary vote this past week in the Senate. 40 Senate Democrats tried to block a U.S. weapons sale to Israel. And that adds to this growing rift we have seen between your party and Benjamin Netanyahu. Do you think Democrats are going to come to regret this break in the alliance?
So I hope that it's not a break in the alliance. I think what it really demonstrates is for the last several years, Prime Minister Netanyahu has sacrificed Israel's interests in the United States. The most important asset Israel has is not its military or its intelligence.
The framing, yeah, the framing there was crazy. Do you think Americans will come to regret not supporting Israel? What the fuck do you mean by that? Hey, what the fuck do you mean? Excuse me. Who's the fucking superpower here? I'm sorry. Do you think Democrats will come to regret no longer defying the wishes of their constituency by supporting a tiny ethno-state in the Middle East that has like 1/20th the population of the United States and is totally dependent on American aid and political support? You think we'll regret that?
It's the special relationship with the United States that has been bipartisan for so many decades. He has destroyed that because he has decided to become not just part of the Republican Party, but he's decided to become just an appendage of Donald Trump. And so
oh yeah, that's the problem with Israel. That Netanyahu's gone Republican. Hey, I wonder why Biden was so deferential to him then. You know, this is the naked cowardice of a person whose only job is to make sure the Democrats remain complicit as well. It's totally like, get us someone other than Netanyahu who will do a better job of respecting the bipartisan consensus of American deference to Israel. You know,
Democrat now sees if you want to be Trump, great. If we're anti-Trump, then by de facto we are against you. I think this is a lot to do with Bibi Netanyahu and his extremist right-wing government, and not to do with Israel. Look, you have half of Israel is voting.
Of course he's saying that, even though the entire government is far right.
Against Bibi.
Yeah.
So I think this Democrat should be aligning.
Why do you torture yourself watching this? Because I'm not going to be satisfied until everyone who watches me understand that everything happening right now would be happening if Kamala Harris won. All of the underlying everything. Not exactly the same, but fundamentally the same. And if you can't see the difference between those two things, I genuinely don't think you're mature enough to understand the content that I produce in this channel. Because I keep having arguments about this where people are like, well, if Kamala Harris was a president, then this little thing would have been different. Yeah, but the nation of the United States has been on a long terminal decline for decades, and it's not been up to the whims of the President Trump, okay? It has been a product of a bipartisan consensus in certain policy decisions, one of which being our deference to Israel.
With Israel, not with Bibi. But I think this is a very big wake-up call this week, that vote.
Significant vote.
Disgusting. Well, anyway, I fucking told you.